Good evening, travelers of myth and memory. Welcome to Mythoria, Secrets and Sagas. Tonight we step into one of the most haunting and misunderstood stories in all of Greek mythology, the tale of Medusa. Some know her as a monster with snakes for hair, whose gaze could turn men to stone. Others see her as a tragic victim, punished for a crime she did not commit. And tonight, I invite you to walk with me through her story, to see with your own eyes, to feel with your own heart, and to decide for yourself. Was Medusa a monster or a victim? Before we begin, I would love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? I create these stories every midnight so that each new midnight another tale may unfold. You, wherever you are part of this great circle of listeners. Now, let us open the doors of time. You stand before an image older than memory. In the torchlight of ancient temples, carved upon stone and painted on pottery, her face appears. Wide eyes, mouth open in a scream or a snarl, hair alive with serpents twisting and hissing. She is Medusa, the Gorgon, whose glance could freeze flesh into marble. For thousands of years, this image has stared back at humanity, on shields, in mosaics, in whispers carried across centuries. You turn your head slightly, and the air feels heavier, as though even speaking her name bends the world around it. Medusa. The sound clings to your tongue, sharp, dangerous, like venom waiting to strike. But pause. Ask yourself, why does she haunt us so deeply? Why has this figure of terror endured across generations, long after the temples crumbled and the old gods fell silent? Perhaps because she is more than a monster. Look again. Beneath the snakes and the glare lies a story. A young woman once walked among mortals and gods, not as a beast, but as a daughter of men. In some tales she was a priestess, devoted to Athena, her beauty so radiant that even the sea god Poseidon desired her. In others, she was simply a mortal girl, so breathtaking that her very presence unsettled the divine. And here is the paradox. Beauty, which we celebrate, can also be a curse. It attracts envy, hunger, violence. To be beautiful in a world ruled by gods was to carry both blessing and danger. Medusa, before the curse, was not a creature of terror. She was admired, envied, and in the end, betrayed. You take a step closer to her statue, etched in stone, and feel the first ripple of fear. Her eyes seem alive, searching, unblinking. They promise no mercy. Yet behind that gaze, do you not also sense pain? Do you not feel the echo of a scream caught in eternity? The poets called her one of the Gorgons, but the myths do not agree. Some say she was born monstrous, one of 3 sisters with serpentine hair. But others, more hauntingly, say she was once human, transformed, cursed, condemned. And this is the question that matters. Was Medusa born a monster, or was she made into one? History remembers her head, severed by Perseus, mounted upon the aegis of Athena. But history seldom remembers the girl who lived before the curse, the beauty who caught the eye of gods, the priestess who served in innocence. As you stand in this chapter's shadow, one truth becomes clear. Medusa is not only a mythic creature, she is a mirror. When you look at her, you do not just see snakes and stone. You see human fear of beauty, human cruelty toward the vulnerable, human hunger to label what we do not understand as monstrous. And that is why she endures, because in her eyes, we see not only the power of a Gorgon, but also the reflection of ourselves. So tonight, as we begin this journey together, hold the image of Medusa close. The wide eyes, the serpents, the scream. Ask yourself, what do you see there? Terror, tragedy, or truth? The answer will shape everything that follows. The image of stone and serpents begins to soften, as if the gaze itself looks away for a moment. You step backward in time, away from the hiss of vipers and the horror of petrifying eyes, back into a world where Medusa was still only a woman. The air is warm. You hear the murmur of waves against rocks, the gulls circling above the Aegean. Somewhere beyond the horizon rises Poseidon's kingdom, the restless sea that always hungers. But here, on the shore, stands a young woman, mortal, fragile, astonishing in her beauty. Her hair is dark and alive with the sun's glint, her skin the pale glow of marble newly cut. This is Medusa before the curse. She is not feared yet, she is admired. Eyes follow her when she walks, whispers trail her name like incense smoke in a temple. Some speak with reverence, others with jealousy, others with desire. For beauty is never neutral. It provokes, it unsettles, it inspires longing in some and hatred in others. In one version of her story, Medusa is a priestess of Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. She serves in the temple, her days filled with ritual and silence. Imagine her there, sweeping the floor beneath Athena's statue, her movements measured, her prayers whispered into stone. Purity is her vow, devotion her path. In the sacred stillness, she believes herself safe. But beauty, even in a temple, cannot hide. Poseidon sees her. In some tellings, he desires her and takes her by force. In others, she yields, drawn by his strength. But whichever way the poets told it, the act unfolds not in some private grove, but within Athena's temple itself, a holy space violated, desecrated. And when the goddess arrives, it is not Poseidon who bears her wrath. It is Medusa. Think about that for a moment. The god acts, the woman pays, the temple is defiled, the priestess is condemned. Even in myth, the old story repeats. The powerful escape, the powerless are punished. And so, the seed of tragedy is planted. You walk now through the corridors of her earlier life, where beauty is both her crown and her chain. Imagine how often she must have felt eyes upon her, not with kindness, but with the weight of expectation, the hunger of possession, the sharp edge of rivalry. To be admired is not the same as to be free. To be adored is not the same as to be safe. Her sisters, the Gorgons, are remembered in some stories as monsters from birth. But Medusa? She was the exception. She was mortal. She could live, love, grow old. She could die. And perhaps that mortality, that humanness, is why her story cuts deeper than the others. She was not born into terror. She was made into it. You see her now, in your mind's eye, not yet cursed, not yet serpent-haired, just a young woman on the edge of fate, unaware of the storm about to descend. A girl who laughed, who prayed, who walked beneath the same sky you do, who had no idea that one day her face would terrify the world. And that is where the pain begins. Because once you know her as human, once you glimpse her before the curse, every image of the Gorgon becomes unbearable. Every hiss of the snake is also the whisper of a stolen innocence. Every statue of stone is also a reminder of how quickly beauty can be turned into a weapon. The hall of myth around you shivers, and you feel time pushing forward again, toward the temple, toward the sea, toward the moment where her life breaks in two. But before we go there, hold this vision of Medusa close, not the monster, not the victim, yet. Simply a woman, luminous and mortal, living her life on the edge of eternity's cruel design. That was Medusa before the monster. And it is here, perhaps, that the true tragedy lies. The sea air thickens, the waves pound harder against the cliffs. You walk with Medusa now into the temple where she serves. Columns rise around you, impossibly tall, each carved with the stern wisdom of Athena. The goddess's statue looms above the altar, helmeted, armored, holding her spear upright. Her eyes are stone, yet you feel them follow you. This is a place of silence, of law, of sacred order. No laughter lingers here, no softness is permitted. Medusa moves quietly, as she always has. Her hands arrange flowers before the altar. Her lips whisper prayers into the echoing chamber. She believes she is safe here, watched over by the goddess whose service defines her life. But tonight, the silence is broken by the sound of waves inside stone walls. You turn your head, and Poseidon is there. His presence is not gentle. It is a storm walking on legs, hair dripping with salt, eyes like the abyss. Wherever he goes, the smell of brine clings, and the sound of crashing surf hammers the ears. He has seen Medusa before. Her beauty has haunted him, gnawed at him like hunger. And here, in this place that should have been sanctuary, he acts. Some poets say it was force, a brutal taking, the sea breaking upon the shore of a mortal woman's body. Others, more cautious, call it passion, a meeting of desire. But whether it was violation or union, the result is the same. Athena's temple is defiled. Sacred stone now carries the echo of something profane. And when the goddess arrives, she does not see Poseidon's power. She does not see the god who could drown cities in a moment. No. Her eyes fall upon Medusa. Imagine the terror in that instant. The girl still trembling, hair disordered, the sea god vanishing back into his endless domain. Athena stands tall, her armor gleaming, her face unreadable, but her silence burns hotter than wrath. She does not forgive. It is Medusa who pays. You watch as the curse falls. Her beauty, once admired, once envied, is twisted. Her hair writhes, serpents hissing where soft locks once fell. Her skin pales to stone's cold sheen. Her eyes sharpen, and their gaze hardens into a weapon. Whoever meets them directly will freeze, flesh stiffening, breath halting, blood congealing into marble. Athena's judgment is precise, merciless. The girl who once brought awe will now bring terror. No one will look upon her with desire again. None will whisper admiration. She will never be touched, never be loved, never be seen as human. She is remade into a warning, into a boundary. The temple walls groan, as though they too grieve. You step back, breath caught in your chest. It is not only Medusa who has been changed. It is the way the world will remember her. Her name will no longer call to mind beauty, but monstrosity. And yet, is she guilty? She was the one pursued. She was the one without power. She was the one punished for what a god chose to do. Here, mythology reveals its shadow. In this ancient mirror, you see how often the powerless are blamed, how often victims are marked as villains, how often the world prefers to curse the wounded rather than confront the strong. Medusa screams. The sound echoes, but no prayer answers it. From this moment on, her voice will not be heard. It will only be feared. You step out of the temple, shaken. Behind you, Medusa has vanished into legend. Ahead of you lies her exile, her isolation, her transformation into the nightmare whispered by mortals. The priestess is gone. The Gorgon is born. You walk into silence, not the calm silence of a temple, not the gentle quiet of a sleeping city, but the suffocating hush of exile. Medusa is gone from the world she knew. No longer a priestess, no longer a woman among mortals. She flees into wastelands where no footsteps follow, into caverns where the sun cannot reach. Here the air is damp. The stone walls drip with water that never dries. Shadows cling like cobwebs, and the ground itself seems afraid to echo her steps. She lives now where only monsters dare. The world above whispers her name, not in love, but in fear. She touches her hair, and it hisses. What once was soft now writhes and coils, serpents living upon her head. Their scales rasp against one another, their tongues flicker with hunger. They are not decorations, they are alive, and she cannot silence them. Imagine the horror, your own body no longer yours, your own beauty turned to terror. She bends toward the stream that runs through the cave, searching for her reflection. The water trembles as if resisting, and then she sees it, eyes rimmed with shadow, mouth twisted in anguish, serpents twisting in endless unrest. She gasps, and even the water recoils. She strikes the surface, shattering the reflection, but it reforms. No matter where she looks, she cannot escape herself. Soon she learns the power of her gaze. A wanderer stumbles upon her cavern, torchlight flickering on the walls. He calls into the darkness, voice wavering but curious. She steps forward and their eyes meet. It happens instantly. His cry cuts short, his body stiffens, his skin hardens to pale stone. The torch clatters from his frozen hand, flames hissing into silence. Now he stands forever in her cave, not as a man, but as a statue. Eyes wide, lips parted mid-breath. Medusa falls to her knees. She did not choose this. She did not wish for his death, yet the curse Athena gave her has turned her very presence into a weapon. She cannot be touched. She cannot be seen. Anyone who dares meet her gaze is lost. Days pass, weeks, perhaps years. Time loses its meaning in exile. More travelers come, hunters, thieves, soldiers. Some seek her, drawn by rumors of a monster. Others stumble in by chance. Each one meets the same fate. Stone after stone, the cavern fills with silent figures. Her loneliness deepens, each statue a reminder that she can never again know companionship. You walk among them now. Their faces are frozen in horror, mouths open, arms raised in futile defense. But look closer. There is also pity. For in their final moment, perhaps they saw not only the monster, but the suffering beneath it. The air grows heavy, and you begin to realize something strange. Medusa herself does not move like a predator. She sits in the shadows, silent, shoulders bowed, surrounded by statues of the men she never meant to kill. It is not triumph in her eyes. It is grief. And so the curse becomes complete. Medusa is no longer remembered as the girl she was, but as the horror she has become. The world above fears her name, tells children stories of the monster with snakes for hair. Few remember the injustice that made her this way. Few ask if the monster was once a victim. You look at her again, sitting among the statues. Her eyes are downcast now, avoiding yours. For the first time, she seems less like a creature of terror, and more like a mirror, reflecting the cruelty of gods, the frailty of justice, the loneliness of exile. And in that reflection you understand. Medusa is not just cursed to turn men into stone. She is cursed to be remembered only as a monster, when in truth she is so much more. The world above moves on. Markets open at dawn, soldiers march to war, lovers whisper in gardens. But none of this reaches the cave where Medusa dwells. She is exiled, erased, buried alive in shadow. And yet her name spreads. You stand at the mouth of her cavern now, the air thick with salt and earth. No birds sing here, no deer wander. Even the wind seems reluctant to enter. The statues, once men, stand in eternal silence, their eyes wide with fear, their bodies locked in postures of resistance. They form a court of ghosts, and Medusa, their unwilling queen. She sits apart from them, her head bowed. The serpents coil and hiss, restless, never sleeping. She tries sometimes to quiet them, stroking their scales like one might stroke unruly hair. But they are alive, separate from her, part of her. When she sleeps, they watch. When she weeps, they taste the salt. Time blurs. Was it months, years, centuries? For Medusa, it no longer matters. She measures her life not in days, but in the number of statues that gather in her cave. Each face is unique, each a story interrupted. A hunter with his bow still raised, an old man clutching a staff, a young boy who strayed too far from home. She does not seek them, yet they come. Curiosity, greed, bravery, whatever draws them in, the ending is always the same. And so her legend grows. Far away in villages and cities, stories are told. Mothers hush their children with warnings, behave, or the Gorgon will come for you. Warriors boast that they will slay her and win eternal glory. Poets describe her as a beast, a horror lurking at the edge of the world. None of them speak of her temple service, her beauty, her curse. They need her to be a monster because monsters are easier to hate than victims are to pity. You imagine her hearing these stories carried on the wind, her name twisted, her memory rewritten. Does she rage? Does she despair? Or has she grown too tired even for anger? Walk deeper into the cave. The air is cold. Statues lean against the walls, their faces pale with terror. Yet among them you sense a strange companionship. These figures, though unintentional, are the only company Medusa has. In their silence she is not entirely alone. And yet, every one of them is also a reminder of her curse, of the touch she cannot give, of the gaze she cannot share. Outside, the sun rises and sets, but for her the days are unmarked. In exile, she becomes less a person and more a symbol. She's no longer Medusa, the mortal girl. She is the Gorgon, the horror, the shadow. And here lies the deepest cruelty of her exile, not just isolation but erasure. Who she was is forgotten. What she suffers is ignored. Only her fearsome image remains, traveling through stories, painted on pottery, carved into shields. You place your hand against the stone wall, cold and damp. In that chill, you feel the truth. Medusa's greatest punishment is not the serpents or the gaze. It is being defined forever by what was done to her, by what she never chose. The world has made her into its monster, and in exile, she has no voice left to correct the tale. The rumor leaves the cave long before the hero does. It sails on traders' lips, snags on fishermen's nets, slips into palace corridors with the dust. A king needs a problem solved, a boy needs a destiny. The world is greedy for both. You stand now far from Medusa's cavern, in a hall bright with polished stone and sharpened smiles. A king, Polydectes, wears hospitality the way a hunter wears fur, for warmth and for show. His eyes find Perseus, young and unscarred, the salt of the island still drying in his hair. A gift, the king suggests, voice smooth as oil. Bring me the head of the Gorgon. The court laughs the way a flock startles, too loud, too quick, a dare dressed as praise. Perseus straightens. He is at the age when a man is mostly promise and the world is mostly doors. He says yes because he thinks courage is a single word and not a long road. You watch him step into the open, and the open answers. Night, shore, the hush that comes when the sea decides to listen. Hermes arrives first, because messengers always get there before the message. Winged sandals kiss the sand. A sly smile slips into the dark. You'll need to be quicker than fear, he says, and sets the talaria at Perseus's feet. Leather clasps, buckles bite, and now the boy is lighter than regret. Athena follows, not with the roar of gods, but with the inward gravity of thought. She bears a shield that is not a shield, a mirror that is not a mirror, the aegis polished into an argument against disaster. Her gaze weighs Perseus, not unkindly. Do not meet horror with your eyes, she says. See it without seeing it. Let reflection be your weapon. She sets the polished face of the shield in his hands, and the moon doubles inside it. A blade arrives, Hephaestus's work, edged like a vow. A bag, too, soft and dark, built to hold what should not be held. The gifts are instructions written in metal and hide. Don't look, don't blink, don't fail. Perseus lifts from the earth, sandals whispering. The islands peel away beneath him, inked in lanes of moonlight. The sea turns from a rumor into a language. Waves speak in a grammar he almost understands. He flies until the horizon forgets him, until even the stars tire of counting him. At last, the land ends with a ragged breath. You feel it, the tilt into wildness. Cliffs claw the sky. Wind learns new teeth. The earth has withdrawn its welcome from this place. Below, the cave mouth opens like a wound that has decided not to heal. He lands without sound. The air here is heavier, as if every frightened story that ever passed a human mouth has condensed and settled. Perseus's hand tightens on the hilt. The shield hangs before him like a tamed moon. He turns it slightly, and the darkness spills across its face in tilted pieces, a jag of rock, a tangle of shadow, a hint of movement that belongs to nothing human. "Do not look," Athena's voice recalls itself inside him. He breathes in measures. 4 beats in, hold 4 beats out. He has never been this quiet. He steps forward, statues greet him, at least there used to be greetings. A man with arm lifted in warning has been trapped at the start of his sentence for longer than memory. A boy's eyes are wide with apology no one will ever hear. A soldier's jaw is clenched so hard the stone remembers the tremor. Perseus passes between them and feels the ancient courtesy of the dead. Go on then, if you must. Deeper. The cave narrows, then opens, like a throat swallowing a promise. The air tastes of minerals and uncried tears. Water somewhere finds stone and tries again. He raises the shield, and the world appears backward. Walls bending the wrong way, emptiness where there should be presence. In that polished circle, he constructs a map made only of refusal. There, a slow ripple, not wind. Another, the purposeful curl of something that knows it is alive. Serpents, many, but not merely many. Plurality behaving like a single thought. The hair he has heard of, the fate he has been told to claim. He dares one glance at the floor so he can place his feet, dares one breath to fortify the next. You feel her before you see her. Medusa sits among her congregation of stone. The snakes lift and lower, tasting the damp, braiding and unbraiding like sleepless worries. Her shoulders are bowed in the way of those who have practiced being small in a world that makes them large for the wrong reasons. Perseus sees none of this directly, only as shapes spilling across the shield's obedient surface. His heart hammers. He tries to make courage out of rhythm. He inches closer, shield raised, blade low, every muscle listening. A snake turns, another follows, and then the whole crown faces the shimmer. She senses him. You can tell when the room begins to hold its breath. Who comes? The voice is not what you expect. No hiss, no roar. It is a woman's voice rubbed raw by years of speaking to no one. It slides down the stone and shivers the water. Perseus stops. The shield trembles. The serpents lift higher, crowns of alertness. He answers nothing. Heroes are taught that silence is strategy. She exhales, a sound that used to be a sigh and has become a concession. Another. The word does not accuse, it takes inventory. Another boy who believes glory is a cut he can keep. The blade is light, as the lie he will soon tell himself. It says her or me. He edges around a column of petrified fear, positions the shield so that the reflection shows her profile, a beautiful geometry undone and remade into terror. The serpents ripple again, and in their motion he sees, absurdly, the memory of hair caught by wind on a temple stair. "Do you know my name?" Medusa asks the dark. Perseus tightens his grip. "You know the story they told you," she continues, "the one with the neat hero and the tidy ending. Does it have a beginning, boy? Do any of your stories ever bother with beginnings?" Something in him clicks like a trap being sprung. The world narrows to arc and angle, the swing he must make, the distance he must guard. He steps into the last space between them. The shield shows her eyes. Closed now. Closed. "It is a mercy to look away," she says, and for a heartbeat he almost does. Athena's instruction tolls like a bell. Do not meet horror with your eyes. He moves. The strike is a line drawn where lines are not allowed. The blade carves night from night. For an instant, the cave becomes absolute silence, the kind that follows lightning before thunder remembers itself. Then the sound arrives, the wet denial of a body deciding to be two. Her head falls into the mirror's world first, mouth parted, not in a scream, but in an O of surprise you will dream about. The serpents writhe, all their languages suddenly the same. Perseus's other hand jerks the bag open. Leather becomes a darkness that accepts what reality rejects. He does not think, he does not pray. He acts because action postpones thinking and prayer. Blood hits the floor and learns to be river. It runs around the feet of statues that have never needed washing. The cave's shadows lean closer, as if years of attention have finally paid out into event. Perseus staggers backward, breath flaring, shield clanging against stone. He does not look, he will never look. He ties the mouth of the bag shut with the blind certainty of sailors knotting against storms. Then something impossible happens, because myths are economies where nothing is wasted. From the pooling blood leaps a sound like hooves, finding air. A white body, more idea than animal at first, kicks itself into being. Wings unfurl, spill feather upon feather of astonishment. Pegasus, the horse poets will ride when language forgets its legs. He shakes droplets from his mane, and they ring like small bells made of light. Beside him, another form, Chrysaor, the golden-sworded, less told, more true. New life from death, because endings are greedy for beginnings. Perseus has no name for what he feels, not victory. Victory is loud, and he has never been quieter, not relief. Relief requires safety, and the statues do not applaud. Something else then, the shock of carrying a story and discovering it, weighs more than your arm, but less than your soul. He looks once, only at the floor, only at the space where she is not and therefore everywhere. A coil of serpent still twitches, learning absence. He wants, absurdly, to say he is sorry. He says nothing, because heroes are not given that line. He turns. The statues do not turn with him. He passes the man with the unfinished warning, the boy with the apology, the soldier with the clenched jaw. He passes their futures, carved without permission. At the mouth of the cave, wind remembers his name and brings it to his ears as if it belonged here all along. Outside, the world resumes. Sea, sky. The far scrape of a gull rewriting silence into sentence. He lifts from the cliff edge, and the air takes him, the bag knocking against his hip with a weight that feels like a second heart. Below, Pegasus rises, the white arc of him cutting a door through the blue. Perseus laughs once, short, astonished, terrified. He is young enough to believe that surviving proves correctness. He flies. Villagers will later claim they saw him, shadow drawn across noon like a fingertip across an eyelid. Courts will prepare, kings will rehearse gratitudes, enemies will prepare excuses. Somewhere far from here, a mother will set down her basket and, without knowing why, touch her throat. Behind him, in the cave that is now a museum of wrong endings, silence closes its book. The body that once housed a voice cools into something holy in the way ruins are holy. The statues keep their watch, faithful to the last command they were given by terror. You remain a moment longer, because stories are not finished by the leaving of their heroes. You walk back to the place where the blade drew its line. The air still smells of copper and decision. If you lean close, you will hear a question the cave is practicing, a question it will ask of every footstep that comes after. When you call something a monster, what relief do you buy with that word? What truth do you refuse? Then you too turn toward the mouth of light. Outside, the wind is an argument you have with yourself and win by agreeing to live. Perseus is a dark seed already blown far across the sky, toward the uses other hands will make of a head in a bag. The story moves on because stories always do, but in your chest something does not move. It stays and hardens into a shape you will carry, a blade that cuts two ways, a mirror that shows two faces. Hero, victim, monster, girl. Words you will not be able to keep separate anymore, and that is the true beginning of his legend and of her afterlife. Perseus does not look back. The bag at his side is heavy, though not with weight alone. Inside it lies a face that no one must meet. The head of Medusa, eyes closed now, yet still alive with the power to turn life into stone. Even severed, she is feared. Even in death she is useful. You follow him as he leaves the cliffs and the cave far behind. The wind rushes past his ears, the sandals of Hermes carrying him swift and high. But listen closely. The story he tells himself is not the story her silence tells. For him, she is the monster slain, the trophy won, the proof of his courage. For her, she is once more denied her voice, reduced to an object carried in leather. When Perseus descends to earth, the head becomes a weapon. He lifts it before those who threaten him, and in an instant they stiffen, their cries dying into stone. Enemies collapse mid-step, soldiers freeze mid-breath. Tyrants fall not by sword, but by a woman's gaze twisted into a curse. Wherever he travels, fear travels before him, not of Perseus himself, but of the head he carries. Medusa, even dead, still does the work of gods and men. Think of the irony. Alive, she was hunted and hated. Dead, she becomes a prize more valuable than gold, a weapon no king would dare face. She's finally desired, but only as a tool. And what of the gods? Athena, who cursed her once, now takes her head for her own. Perseus lays it at her feet, and the goddess fixes it upon her shield, the terrible Aegis. There forever, Medusa's face glares outward, warding off enemies, striking terror in those who see it. Her scream, her pain, her rage, frozen into divine protection. But ask yourself, what justice is this? The very goddess who transformed her into a monster now claims her image as a symbol of power. Athena never lifts the curse. She never restores the girl who once prayed in her temple. Instead, she enshrines her suffering, makes it eternal, immortal not as a person but as a warning. You picture that shield now, glinting in the sun of countless battles. Warriors march behind it, never knowing the story of the face they bear. They do not ask whose eyes glare from the bronze. They do not wonder what wrongs were done to her. They only see a weapon, a charm against their own fear. In villages and cities, people hear the tale. Perseus, the hero who slew the monster. They cheer his name, carve his likeness, sing his victories. Medusa's name fades into shadow. She becomes a detail, a prop in his legend. He earns glory. She remains the monster, and yet she is everywhere, carved on shields, painted on walls, worn as amulets around the necks of men who believe her gaze will ward off evil. They call her image apotropaic, turning away harm. The woman who once could not protect herself becomes the protector of others, though she is never thanked for it. Her face is feared but also needed, despised but also revered, monster but also guardian. Stand for a moment with this contradiction. Medusa is dead, yet alive, erased, yet remembered, hated, yet indispensable. Her legacy is not her own to shape. It belongs to others, to those who carry her head, to those who wear her image, to those who wield her power without ever asking what it cost her. And so her story continues, not as a woman's tale, but as a god's weapon, a hero's prize, a symbol torn from its source. This is the cruelest legacy of all, that she lives forever, but never as herself. You have walked with her from beauty to curse, from exile to death, from blood to legend. Now you stand at the end of her story, or perhaps not the end, but the place where stories ripple outward like circles on water. Medusa's face, her name, her memory have traveled farther than her body ever could. And so we must ask, who was she? Look once more into her eyes. Not the eyes painted on pottery, not the glaring mask fixed to Athena's shield, but the eyes of the girl who once swept the floor of a temple. Eyes that looked at the sea and did not yet fear it. Eyes that looked at herself in water before serpents hissed back. Eyes that saw the world as it was, and perhaps even loved it. Those eyes are still there, hidden beneath centuries of retelling, buried under the word monster. What do you see when you look at her now? Some will always see the Gorgon, the creature of terror, hair alive with snakes, gaze that kills. For them, Medusa is the danger that must be slain, the chaos outside the walls of order. In this view, she is a lesson, that courage can triumph, that monsters fall to heroes. Others will see the victim, the mortal punished for another's crime, a woman silenced by divine wrath. For them, Medusa is the mirror of injustice, a story that reveals how often the powerless bear the weight of the powerful. In this view, she is not a monster but a warning of cruelty, of blame, of the cost of silence, and some will see both, victim and monster, woman and gorgon, cursed and enduring. For in truth, she is not simple. She cannot be contained by one word, one role, one story. She is all of them at once, and perhaps that is why she haunts us still. Walk now through the centuries. In ancient Greece, her head was carved onto shields and doorways, a guardian against evil. In Rome, she was painted into mosaics, her face staring from the floors of villas. In the Middle Ages, she became an emblem of sin, a symbol of temptation. In the Renaissance, she was reborn in marble and canvas, her pain captured by sculptors and painters who saw tragedy in her scream. And today, she is invoked anew, by voices who call her a feminist icon, a symbol of survival, a face that refuses to be forgotten. Each age remakes her. Each age chooses what it needs her to be, and through it all, the question remains unanswered. Who was Medusa truly? Now, traveler, the mirror turns toward you. When you hear her name, when you imagine her face, what do you see? Do you recoil from her as the ancients did? Do you mourn her as a victim of injustice, or do you find in her something of yourself, your wounds, your fears, your strength? Because Medusa is not just a myth, she is a mirror. Look long enough, and she shows you your own reflection, your own shadows, your own pain, your own resilience. And so, here at the end of the tale, I leave you with her gaze. Not to petrify, not to terrify, but to invite, to ask you to see not only her, but yourself. Tell me, dear listener, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you listening from? More importantly, tell me, was Medusa a monster, a victim, or both? Your reflections weave this story into something greater, something alive. Thank you for walking with me through her life, her curse, her death, and her legacy. May this tale accompany you into sleep, into thought, into the quiet spaces of your day. Remember, though gods may curse and heroes may kill, the voices of the silenced still echo. And sometimes those echoes are louder than thunder. Until the next saga, traveler, rest well, live deeply, and never fear to look into the mirror. Good night.